this session of marketing times programming equals a recipe for success. Our presenters this morning are Cecilia Lopez Cardenas and Quanteria Roberson, both with the University of Texas at Austin. So a couple of reminders before we get going. The session is being recorded, so please make sure that you're aware of that. The chat function is available, so feel free to message the group, message the co-host directly. Any questions you may have, feel free to use that chat function. I will be monitoring that. We asked ahead of time, but if you want to change your name to represent, maybe instead of the university you're with, if you want to use your program area or what your primary responsibility is with your university at the request of our presenters, that will be helpful as well. With that, also keep yourself on mute unless it's question time or participation time. Before we continue, if you want to continue on to the next slide, we want to give a shout out to our conference sponsors. We're very thankful and honored that these 9 sponsors have made the opportunity for this conference to be free. I know we all wish we were connecting in person, but our next best option is here, this virtual option. So a major shout out to our 9 sponsors of our conference. So with that, I will turn it over to our sponsors, to our presenters. Ladies, take it away.
Gladly to be called a sponsor. That's great. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for choosing to spend some time with us this morning. We know we are the last thing between lunch and getting lunch, so we'll try to get through this as engaging as possible. My name is Cecilia Lopez Cardenas, and I'm the Senior Assistant Director for Communications at Recreational Sports at the University of Texas at Austin.
Hi everyone, super excited to have you all with us. My name is Quanteria Roberson. I'm the Assistant Director for Communications with Rec Sports at the University of Texas.
So just a little bit of a context in terms of what we're hoping to address today and maybe what you can hope to get out of the session today. We're going to do our best to cover all of these items. Some of our goals for today is hopefully that after the session, you can reflect and apply best practices for collaborating with your in-house marketing teams, or if you are your own marketing team, or if you are the marketing team, best ways to collaborate with programming areas. Identifying key performance indicators or KPIs for your program and marketing campaigns, and then understanding the importance of the role that your marketing team can play in helping you reach your programming goals. Before we jump into the content, we did want to provide a little bit of context as far as our kind of where we're coming from with all of this information, so that you can kind of get a little bit of an understanding of what we do as a marketing team at Recreational Sports at UT Austin. So first, a little bit of our team structure. We're really grateful to have a team of 4 full-time professional staff members. Q and I are with you today, but we couldn't do the work that we do without a senior graphic designer and a coordinator that work in making all of the magic happen day to day. And then a team of student staff members that really help us capture storytelling through photography and videography, as well as graphic design. So this is sort of our team.
So a little bit about the things that we make happen with the team that we just mentioned. So across all of our social media platforms, we have an audience of about 11.7 thousand. And we've sent about almost 1,000 messages and made about 1.6 million impressions. Our website, and we use Google Analytics to kind of measure these views, we get about 1.6 million page views. For email marketing, we use MailChimp, and we have an audience of about 16,000 students, 11,000 members, and in the year of 2018 to 2019, we sent almost 300 email campaigns. And one of the things I'm most proud of is our YouTube subscribers. We have nearly 400, and that is just since March when we were presented with the opportunity to switch everything to virtual programming. We really gained a lot of subscribers on YouTube. So that's kind of our reach at a glance and what you're seeing happen from the team that we just mentioned previously.
So as we work with our program area colleagues, I wanted to give you a little bit of an overview of the big buckets, if you will, of the tactics that we utilize in our marketing efforts. So first, I know everybody can get excited for this, all things digital marketing, and you probably want to know all about that today. We're not going to be able to cover that, but we'll give you some tidbits. Our focus is going to be a little bit on social and email as well. But digital marketing, right? That's like the number one thing, especially also as we're all virtual, that's playing a huge role. So how do we maximize that? Also, how do we invest some dollars in that with paid social? That's one of the things that we have started to do that in the recent years. Then it's content marketing. In our team, we have been exploring that more and more since March. Content marketing is going to be those educational pieces, videos, things that are not necessarily tied to a direct call to action, but can help establish your department as a subject matter expert in the work that you do. What that does, it helps build brand awareness, brand loyalty, and ultimately, even though it doesn't have a call to action, might result in more brand following and potentially conversions and more registrants and participants. So really encourage you to embrace and think about that. We do that through blogs and videos like we mentioned. Then it's event marketing. Of course, traditionally, we love ourselves a great in-person event, right? That really helps us expose our participants to all that we have to offer in a way that it's easy, doesn't require advanced planning. Folks can jump in and play and participate and experience our brand, our department, and our services. But also we can do that virtually, as we've done with back to school events, summer orientation, you name it. We also have what I guess you could call our brand ambassadors, is our team of students that are doing face-to-face on the ground field marketing, interacting with participants, getting them engaged, having presentations, maybe your traditional tabling on your campus. And then some of the, perhaps some obvious ones, but we do want to mention on-campus ads, both print and digital. We've backed up a little bit on the print side of things, especially now since we're remote. But in digital signage, also something that we do. Strategic campus partnerships, when this is maybe an area where we swerve a little bit into the programming side, working closely with our programming teams in developing campus partnerships to reach a wider audience, perhaps partnering with a student organization or a department that works closely with that target audience that you might have in your program area. And then, of course, always $1 million question is, how do we reach all students on our campus about all the things? We don't have the answer to that. If you have it, we want to talk to you about it. We want to learn from you. So the best thing one of the best things that we can do is, how do we leverage those university level marketing platforms that have wide reach to make sure that we build awareness about what we offer. So what you're here to learn about today, what has been the recipe for success in partnering as a marketing team with our program area colleagues. And so 4 key things that we're going to go over today: partnership, planning, prioritizing, and closing the loop. So we'll go take one at a time. So we're going to start, which is right off the bat, with a secret ingredient. It's what we find to be partnership. It's all about partnership and really working very closely together in everything that we do. It seems obvious, but that doesn't always happen in every department. And so we're really proud of that. And that is founded really in a couple of pillars: trust in each other's expertise. You as a programmer, facility manager, event organizer, you are the expert in your industry about what you're doing. We hope you think the same of us as your marketing team. You are busy organizing the best program that you can put together for your audience. So we want you to focus on that. We will focus on coming up with creative solutions to increase engagement, participation, retention. We will provide that. We have shifted over the years in our department from very much of tell us what you want exactly about marketing to more of tell us what your challenges are, tell us what you're hoping to accomplish, and we will develop a plan in partnership with you to develop that. That doesn't mean, that also comes with a level of humility too, even though we're the experts at what we do, also owning the fact that there may be times where we may have feedback for each other, and that's okay. And we may not know everything about the work that we're doing, but embracing that. We also have this shared responsibility to see our programs succeed, to engage our students, right? We're all in it together, and that's important. So that's another key piece. So let us, again, take care of the marketing side of things. You focus on your programs. Also, we'll talk a little bit about today that shared responsibility. There's a lot of planning that comes into that, goal setting, reporting with one another, circling back, closing the loop. We threw in grace in here also because it's 2020. We need a whole lot of it as we're all juggling lots of responsibilities at home and at work, and things changing and adjusting and embracing this sort of new normal that we're in. And so giving each other grace and a little bit of patience. And then that students first approach. Of course, our faculty and staff members are also a key set of stakeholders and constituents. However, students first approach. How are we best serving our students? Also in our marketing, how are we engaging them? How are we bringing them to the table to participate in those conversations of where they want to see this information? How can we best do it? And same on the programming side. So when it comes to planning, we wanted to share a few tidbits on how we approach our marketing planning. So typically about 2 months before the start of each semester, since we all live our lives in semesters, planning ahead, coming together with our programming colleagues to develop what the marketing plan is for the following year. We gather, it seems obvious, but we're mentioning it, gathering all of the information at once for what you have planned for the year ahead, for the semester ahead, so that we can sort of see what are all of the messages that we're having to put out there over the course of a cycle. Of course, there's going to be special projects and initiatives that come up along the way, but planning ahead helps us identify where our bandwidth is, how these messages align with one another or overlap. Part of that planning is a lot of goal setting. You're probably already doing this for your leadership, for your team. How are you going to measure success that particular semester? What audiences are you hoping to reach? And that particular aspect of audiences, are you looking to increase participation in a particular sport or program? Are you hoping to reach certain capacity levels for a particular event or program? So specifically to audiences, I'm going to turn it over to Q because that's particularly important to a lot of our digital work.
Yeah, so one of the key things to a successful campaign is knowing who you are talking to. And I feel like one of the things that my grandma has always told me since I was very little is if it don't apply, let it fly. And I find that to be true across all areas of life. If you feel like someone is not talking to you, then you're likely to not engage. You're likely to not receive the message. So it's important to know who you are talking to cater that content, to reach them so that they follow your call to action, so that they are engaged and they continue to be excited about your content. So I'm sure that poses the question, how do I identify my audiences across my digital platforms? So there are a couple tools that I use, super easy and that are available to you if you are on social. Take advantage of the analytic tools that are built into social platforms. For example, Twitter Analytics is very helpful in helping you not only identify your audience, but also understanding their interests. You can find lookalike audiences. So you can see who's following athletics at your school. You can see who's into fitness. You can see who's into Zumba or different type of classes so that you can cater content that you know is going to be exciting to them. Same thing with Facebook and Instagram Insights. They're going to be together because, you know, now Facebook owns everything. So they're going to be very similar. It gives you so much information, it's almost creepy. You can see exactly where someone is logging in from. You can see what the pages they like, what type of device they are accessing your content on. All of this is super, super helpful for you to know in building your content and creating campaigns because you're able to understand exactly not only what people want to see, but how they want to see it and how you can design it to be best consumed. So super important to really, really understand who you're talking to. So every message that you put out not only reaches them, but creates a feeling of compellingness and willingness to move forward and interact with your content.
And as you identify your audiences, we always encourage you to be specific and as tailored as possible. Of course, we all, like we mentioned earlier, we want to make sure all students are aware of all of the things that we do. But the more tailored that our messaging is, the higher the conversion that might be if we're tailoring the message to a particular audience, and being really honest with yourselves too on what that looks like. So once we gather all of this information, our marketing team comes together to brainstorm all of those creative ideas. Is it going to be some content marketing? Is there a great blog post we can create? What's the video production side of things? How are we going to reach that certain audience on campus? All of those things. And then we come back to the table with our colleagues and discuss what that plan looks like. We exchange ideas and feedback. And even though, yes, there's a plan and we're planners, so 2020 has been challenging for us, we like to have the plan in place, knowing that things might change and adjust. And we're always flexible with that. but sticking to the plan as best we can, it's always helpful. Scott actually is on the chat with a really good question that I think it's timely right now. How far in advance do program and marketing staff connect to help launch the event as successful as possible? For semester-wide ongoing programming, so say your intramural leagues, your adventure trips, your Group X program, we typically are starting conversations for January right about now in November. So about 2 full months in advance is when we start planning for the following cycle or semester. And if there's something that comes up in the middle of the semester where you're hoping to host a special event that maybe you weren't planning on, more advance notice, the better, because what that does is help us plan ahead, reach more people, come up with even more creative ideas. The less time that we have, the lesser our resources might be, and also being mindful of where our students are at in the course of that semester, right? So for that, we typically recommend, we love a good 2-week notice in terms of what we put out in front of our participants. We want to give them about 10 days notice wherever we can. So you got to work back from that a little bit, depending on the size of the event, how much preparation, is it free, is it not? So those are all things to think about. We like at least 2 weeks notice to turn something around thoughtfully. Hope that helps answer the question, but please jump in on the chat if you have any other questions we can help answer. So then with so many messages and so many awesome programs and activities, how do we prioritize this? We, of course, just like you, believe that every program that we do is important. Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing them, hopefully. And so we want to make sure that we prioritize that, though. So how do we do that when you have perhaps overlapping audiences, the timing, some conflicting deadlines, and so what we do really is we go back to the basics. We go back to the goals. How are we aligning with those? What program perhaps needs a little bit more help? So for example, if it is a program that is struggling or generates a significant amount of revenue, perhaps, I'm not saying that the efforts is going to be bigger and better, but perhaps we're prioritizing that a little bit more versus perhaps a program that is a trip that fills super quickly and easily, and it has a really target audience. We might prioritize that a little bit differently. So as a marketing team, we can try to objectively do that when we take a look at goals, where we're at in the academic year. And so one of the examples that we want to offer up today is how do we prioritize that content on social, for example, when there's so much to share.
Yeah, so I think when people think about social media, it's a really quick way to get information out in front of people. And it can be tempting to want to put all of your content out on social media and let that be how you serve your audience. I caution against that, specifically because when you are putting everything on social media and you're doing it so many times a day, you're essentially creating noise, and things that you want people to interact with are getting missed because you're constantly posting. So when you are thinking about your messaging for social media, I want everyone to consider, who am I trying to reach with this content? Is that audience even on my social media platforms? And I think that goes back to identifying your audience. If you have a program that is specifically for an older audience, for example, it's a class that's catered to it, and you know, okay, all of my followers tend to be very young. It's an audience that's very college centered. Perhaps social media is not going to be the best place or the best way to reach that audience. So when a campaign does apply to all of your audiences, it's still important to think about how you prioritize that messaging and catering it to that specific audience so that you're giving them the information that relates directly to them, the information that makes them want to act, the information that resonates with them and is going to make them follow up with your call to action. So while it may be super tempting to put everything out because you have such a great following on social media, or you know this is how people are going to see it, really consider, is this going to serve the purpose and get those people to interact and follow the call to action that I have? Or is it just going to become noise and people are going to start ignoring my messages? I think that's really, really important to consider when you're building out your social calendar and trying to prioritize content. Is it going to be meaningful, and is it going to serve the purpose that you built that campaign for?
Of course, this would happen and had to happen at least once during the presentation. So closing the loop, right, along the way in reporting, and it goes both ways. So for program areas to report back on their progress, we don't do that just to be nosy. It just helps us understand how we're tracking our efforts versus what's been that return on either the investment that we put both in dollars and time, what needs a bump, what's in a really good place. So perhaps if there's a full trip already, we're not promoting it anymore. So if you're not already doing that with your marketing teams, think about how you can, on an ongoing basis, share data with one another. We do weekly reporting. We utilize our project management platform. We use Basecamp to exchange that information on a weekly basis. And year-to-year comparisons are really helpful. I know that 2021 is going to be a really challenging year to have anything to compare it to, but traditionally, we would like to know, okay, during this time of the year or this point in the registration process, where were we last year in terms of registrants or participation? So we kind of know where we stand, also as it relates to the goals. So it goes both ways, and we're not perfect at it, but also our hope is to be able to report back to our colleagues in our progress as well on the marketing front, so that we can also measure what's been the return on investment, but also the conversion rates. So of all of these things that we've done, what's that resulted in? And so along the way, we exchange that information. So the question is, when you look at digital marketing, because that's where you're going to have your really hard data, what should you be looking at? There's so much to look at. So what should you prioritize in sharing? And Q will give you the scoop on that.
Okay, so there's so much reporting that can be done with social, and it can be difficult to identify what it really means and what is really meaningful to you. So I think that there are so many pieces of information that are viral we see every single day. We consume so much viral information. What I want to hammer into everyone's head is that viral does not equal successful on social media. And I know we live in an age where it can seem that way, but when is the last time you consumed a viral piece of content that moved you in any way, that made you want to get up and stop scrolling and do something that was similar to what you saw in that content? It might have gotten a laugh out of you or maybe even a scoff, but that was kind of it. You kind of just scrolled and it was mindless. So I want people to know that that is not the key indicator of success. So when we talk about social media, I think there are a few terms that are thrown around often, and I kind of want to define those and really talk about which ones to look at and which ones will matter to you when you are reporting or when you're reading a report. So reach, for instance. Reach is going to be the number of people who have seen your post. Doesn't mean they've taken any action. They viewed it. They saw it. That's what reach is going to mean. Engagement, however, is going to be a step further. This is going to mean that they viewed a video, clicked a link, liked, shared, retweeted. They took some action. Not only did they see it, but they took an action. Another key piece of information I want to kind of let everyone know about is impressions. Now, impressions is a number that tends to be fairly large, no matter what your following is, simply because this means this is the number of times that your content is simply displayed on a feed or on a timeline. Doesn't mean anyone saw it, doesn't mean that anyone took any action, it was just there. So when you're reporting and you're thinking about what is really important to really measure, well, impressions is not always going to be helpful because yes, your content was there, but no one saw it, no one engaged. So when it comes to thinking about how do I know if my campaign was successful on social media, well, that's going to depend. What is your goal? What's your call to action? So if you are starting a brand new following on social media, then that key indicator is definitely going to be how many followers do I have? How many followers have I seen increase since I made this post about, hey, this is a brand new account. We want to get more followers. I need to measure how many followers we're seeing from then on. Now, if you're announcing a new sport club or there's a new intramural event, a new adventure trip destination, for example, you're going to want to build awareness. And in that instance, when you're looking for awareness, reach is going to be important. And that's going to mean people who saw it. So if you're announcing something new, you really want to make sure that your engagement, your reach is going to be high because that's going to be people really consuming that content. Another thing I want to point out is that you can have several KPIs for one campaign. So I'll use, for instance, earlier this summer, we did a Welcome Back to Rec Sports video. And in that video, we were showing everyone all of the changes that we made to welcome our participants back to Rec Sports safely. Additionally, we were giving them a look at what their experience is going to be like with all of our new guidelines and safety protocols. From this campaign, there were several KPIs that I personally measured. Not only did I want reach to be a large number because I want the mass amount of people to consume this information, but I also looked at engagement. I wanted it to be shared. I wanted comments. I wanted people to like and retweet, simply because this information is important for all participants and our community, and we want to make sure that as many people as possible are consuming it. I also wanted a lot of comments and responses because it allows me to gauge the temperament of people and how they are feeling as they come back into our facilities, so we can get ahead of that and be prepared to handle with any kind of emotions people may be feeling with all of these changes. So I think it's really important to consider when you are reporting, you have to first think about what are you hoping to see happen from this campaign? And that is going to determine your success. It doesn't always mean that you need a million likes, a million retweets. It really just means you need to reach the audience that you're trying to reach and that they're following the call of action that you present when you created that campaign.
So with all of the reporting and sort of in closing the loop, what that helps us also do, and you should do, just in the same way that when you do assessment in your program, is as a marketing team, we take a look at those wins and areas of opportunity for improvement. And that can happen throughout the semester or at the end of a cycle to make sure that we enhance and improve. If we look at the clock, we can see that we're pretty passionate and excited to talk all things about this, but we want to hit pause for a moment to answer any questions that you might have, and then we'll give you some final thoughts. So feel free to chime in with any questions. You're welcome to unmute yourself.
I have one question. Here in Houston, we're a community college, but we have multiple campuses, right? But we only have one social media page that basically caters to all 6 colleges that we have, including our district office. And you were talking about not overwhelming our page with content. So we've created basically timelines. You can only post at, like if you post at 9, you can post at 12, then you can post at 2. But here's the problem. What happens when you have 6 campuses with an event at the same time? How would you go about marketing that?
May I ask what platforms you all are using? Is it just one platform like Twitter or Facebook, or do you have several?
We use Facebook and Instagram.
Okay. One of the things that I would suggest, because we often have events that are happening at the same time, we really take advantage of our Facebook events. So that's super helpful because I do not feel bad about getting events out all at once, but it allows people to consume the information that they want. It's out there, that people are going to see it, but it really kind of creates a nice calendar. And with your events, you can also share it and create posts as you get closer to the event. So I definitely recommend taking advantage of that. If you know that there are going to be several events happening at the same time. You could also leverage your Instagram story to say like a week at a glance. And in that instance, if you have several events that are happening in that week, well, just create a story that tells everyone like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, here's your week at a glance, and here are all the events that are going to happen. So it doesn't overwhelm people. People can easily screenshot the events they're interested in, and every single college is kind of getting their time to shine. So that's what I would recommend.
Hi, this is Anthony from University of Central Arkansas. I guess I need to rephrase my question that I had. When you push information, there's a different way to push it on Facebook than Twitter, than Instagram, than email, those kinds of things. And I guess what I meant by the war and peace is that sometimes we have people that literally want to, I use the word vomit everything they can on information for marketing and media to push out. And you try to explain to somebody that you literally cannot put down every single word, i.e. war and peace. How do you use the best way to go about talking to your coworkers and explaining that you don't literally have to put down every single word to advertise something?
Yeah, we take a lot of editorial freedom when we take in that content. And I think it comes in that mutual trust, right? That we're going to make the best decisions in partnership with our colleagues. Part of it is, I think, the explanation of, again, what is the goal with that information that we're presenting? Because if my goal is when I send you an email is I also want some website traffic, I probably shouldn't just deliver every single detail on that email. One, it's overwhelming. You're not going to read it. So keep it down to like the very basics, the who, the what, the where, and then learn more. It's a key. I know it's overused, but that leads you to being able, especially if you're using some type of email marketing platform. I'm using email as an example. That's going to drive more click-through, hopefully, to the website. And it kind of helps you understand, are people really interested in learning more? Because if you present all of the information at once, you don't really have much of a measure to understand, did Did they really were interested, or just did they read it? Did they want to learn more? And so it kind of gives us a little bit of an understanding of how interested in the program people are, and then, you know, get those data points accordingly. So I think that's one of the reasons also to not present everything at once, a little bit selfishly, to kind of, you know, get people to, you know, to website, to social, again, depending on what that call to action is. Q, I don't know if you have anything to add, please do.
I also feel like it's helpful to sometimes just present people with the facts. You know, people are just not really reading or consuming that much information, and that's not what they're looking for. And there's a reason that you're limited to characters on social media platforms, because we know that people are not going to consume really large amounts of text. So I think sometimes it's okay to kind of just remind people of, like, we have to use platforms the way they were meant to be used. I think that's helpful.
And then ultimately too, agreeing on what is the one call to action for that set of communication. You shouldn't have more than one, because that's how you're going to measure it best. Is it register? Is it learn more? Is it purchase? What is it? Because otherwise it gets overwhelming. So that's kind of how we try to break it up. It's not perfect, but that's how we prioritize it a little bit. Does that help a little bit? Answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Of course.
Awesome.
Oh, and Catherine and David, we would love that Facebook group. We're not familiar with that, I don't think. So we would love that active networking group for campus rec marketing. Any other questions we can help answer as we reach the top of the hour?
Yeah.
Well, before we go to lunch or whatever you have planned next, we wanted to just drop just a few little tidbits for you on some general pro tips. I think we addressed a little bit of this throughout, but making your communication targeted. Q, maybe address a few highlights of that.
Yeah, one of the things we are really, really intentional about is segmenting our lists when it comes to emails, specifically by how we are connecting with those people. So are they participating in intramural sports? Are they a part of a sport club? Are they participating in our fitness and wellness classes? And targeting information to them in ways that is meaningful and is increasing our subscribe rates and open rates, and we're not having a lot of people unsubscribe. And also making sure that we're not hitting large amounts of people with the same information over and over, to where it becomes a point they're dreading getting any sort of information from us, and they're not opening the emails at all. So I recommend, if you aren't using an email marketing tool, definitely invest in one if your budget allows. If you're just simply using Excel sheets to keep track of all your lists, wherever you're getting that data from, segment them, know how you're connecting with those people, know how you got those email addresses, so that you can create content and email marketing that is meaningful, and really you're seeing the result that you want from those people.
For those of you that are marketing teams on this call, we can't recommend enough to find some type of project management tool to stay sane within your team, but also to keep track of all projects and communication. You'll see at the closing slide, Basecamp is the tool that we use. So that's our go-to, but there's plenty out there for you to explore, to really also have a historical record of all of the things that we've done in the past as well. The other tidbit that we want to throw in here, I know that we're always quick to think about external communication and reaching our participants, but don't forget about your internal communication plan, especially for new initiatives, or as you reopen facilities, or as you introduce new programs. Work with your marketing teams to do that, or someone outside of your program area if you don't have a marketing team, to really develop talking points, frequently asked questions. And this is not just for your leadership. This is really also for your customer service teams, to help best address questions that participants might have, and give them full ownership of that process. And so that's always important too, in how you're communicating internally about what you're doing. And then photo and video.
I could talk a little bit about photo and video content capture. One of the things I like to always reiterate with people is that you can capture really high quality content right from your iPhone these days, or your smartphone, whichever you operate with. There are simple capabilities. You can turn on 4K filming, and that really just creates a super high quality video. I recommend taking advantage of the portrait tool, because it creates a lot of depth and dimension. It gives you a really sharp image and focus and a nice blurred background, which is great to me because it gives you a really professional kind of feel without having to have that professional equipment. And yeah, I also recommend just really thinking about how to tell stories with your photo and video capture, because I think a lot of the times if you're going into capturing video or photo aimlessly and you don't have a goal, well, it kind of reflects in what you capture. So really kind of have a plan of what you're going to be using those photos and videos for, so that you're able to capture them in the best way.
And then in our last slide here, we have just a listing of our favorite tools. We're not paid by any of these brands to share those with you, but we wanted to share what's kind of in our toolkit for project management, social, video hosting, you name it. So definitely check those out. They have varying plans to fit your budget as you produce videos, as you look into starting a blog, also as you go into virtual events and all of that. We are so grateful that all of you were here and chose to join us today. Thank you for taking the time. We also have, I think, our contact information. If not, we'll drop it in the chat. As far as how to reach us, we'll drop in our Twitter handles. Feel free to reach out to us if you have any further questions. We are ready to keep talking about it. So let's stay in contact. Feel free to shoot us an email or a DM on Twitter, and let's connect. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Awesome. And I posted in the chat the link to the Google form. So if y'all wouldn't mind taking a few moments to provide some feedback for our wonderful presenters this morning. Their contact information is here on the screen, so we'll keep that up for a moment. But we also posted that in the chat as well if it's easier to copy and paste. So thank you all for your attendance today. Enjoy a little bit of a break, and we hope to see you this afternoon.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.